Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for getting up relatively early to embark on this journey that we're going to experience today, which will take us all the way through to 6:45 p.m., those who want to stay on for drinks later on. We will have a full house here. A few stragglers haven't yet arrived, but it's going to be a fantastic day. This is our second longevity forum. This forum was started by Dafina Grapci-Penney in the front row here, along with Andrew Scott and myself about 18 months ago, and it's now become part of a big ecosystem that I'll illustrate to you in a couple of minutes. So this would not be possible without the help of our strategic partners and supporters. And our strategic partners this year are Barclays, represented by Caleb Culverwell, I think is his name, and a good chum, and then Hill Dickinson, leading firm of lawyers, and our own company, Juvenescence, which we hope will be a leader in the science of longevity. We've got a packed program today. We've got a coffee break, and we've got a lunch, and then we've got drinks later on. So I always find it very difficult to encapsulate the scientific advance that's occurring in the science of longevity in one slide. Since I've only got 5 minutes, I had to choose one slide. But I think the best way of explaining this is to say that in my own limited way, I've been researching this area for some time. And I published my first book in 2012 on biotech called Cracking the Code. Since then, there have been some absolutely amazing advances in biotech, loosely speaking, and up till now, the book Juvenescence. And those advances include artificial intelligence for the design of novel compounds. So Alex Zakharonov, who's here, or will be here shortly, has published in Nature magazine recently that he can develop a novel compound in 45 days versus the canonical 3 years in the past, so we can accelerate the process of drug development and personalized medicine in due course. CRISPR-Cas9 that you're all familiar with didn't exist 7 years ago, and now is the focus of a multi-billion-dollar industry and will be part of the science of longevity, which will enable someone on the planet to live beyond 150 in the opinion of eminent scientists. We have the cure for hepatitis C in the last 7 years. It didn't exist. And cancer immunotherapy, which people will be familiar with in this room, is now the standard of care in many cancers, including blood cancers. It didn't exist 7 years ago, and today it's about $150 billion a year industry. So a lot of this is invisible to the general public, but is really, really important in the context of scientific advance. In the next 7 years, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we know it's going to be even better than in the last 7 years. And a lot of it will be focused on the science of longevity, because the aspiration of most of us to live healthier and longer is being matched and caught up by the science. So this is not science fiction. We're seeing human trials now in some of these compounds. The general trajectory of the scientific advance will be in small molecules, then stem cells, organ regeneration, microbiome, and ultimately gene therapy, which I talked about earlier, which will take the first person beyond 150 years. But as a matter of routine, we can expect people to live now, based on current technologies, to 110 or 120. And Andrew will be talking later on about the implications for that socially, and Dafina about the implications for that from an ethical point of view. So this is going to be a day of broad spectrum longevity science and longevity social science. And as part of London Longevity Week, this is our second Longevity Week, there are many other things that have been going on. We've had a summit at Oxford, which was curated by Lynn Cox, who's here, Professor Lynn Cox at Oriel College, Oxford. We've had multiple events, including a dinner last night hosted by Nature magazine, amongst others. And next year, we go international with our first forum in Muscat in Oman. And Andrew has just been in Singapore for a Singaporean forum. So we are now we're the focal point of part of Longevity Week, which is expanding around the globe. And we're super excited to be in that sort of hub. Additionally, we've built up an ecosystem of people, supporters, eminent scientists, social scientists, entrepreneurs, many of whom are here today, who've flown from around the world in many cases, Singapore, Australia, the United States, Oman, and so forth. And that is an expanding universe of people who are collaborative, almost like a family, to advance the mission so that people can live healthier for longer. This business, if you want to look at it from a business point of view, is about 140 or 150 billion US dollars a year. None of the products work yet. In 10 years' time, many of the products that will work and are working will be on the market and will have a profound effect on humanity. And you can just imagine if it's $150 billion a year for stuff that doesn't work yet, how big the industry will be in 10 or 20 years' time. So from every point of view, from an investor point of view, from a humanity point of view, from a social point of view, from a government point of view, this is the most exciting thing to be happening on the planet. And it's great that you guys turned out to listen to all of us today telling you more about this exciting area. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And now I would like to introduce my dear friend, collaborator, colleague, and co-founder, along with Daphina, of the Longevity Forum and of the Longevity Week. This is Professor Andrew Scott of the London Business School, All Souls College at Oxford, author, which many of you will have read, of the 100-Year Life, which has sold hundreds of thousands of copies and has been very influential in many countries around the world. And Andrew is going to do two things. First of all, introduce the social science part of the day, and then secondly, educate us all in how to use Slido, which is our sort of technology angle, and which will be employed all the way through the day. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Fantastic. Great. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for being here today. So the great thing about longevity is it covers everything. I'm always keen to say that longevity is different from aging in the sense that it's about all of life. Of course, the trouble with that is it means you can talk about anything. And today we will kind of be talking about anything and everything. There's a science, but also there's a social science. And for me, there's three big trends that are going to change the world in the next 20, 30 years. And we hear a lot about AI and robotics. We hear a lot about the environment and sustainability. And we hear a lot about aging. I'd like to hear more around longevity, and I'll try and explain the difference in a moment. But what I think is really interesting about longevity, and I think it's important to grasp hold of it, is in a way more than the AI and sustainability, it's an innately human issue. It's about us and our life and how long we live. And you can think of that in so many different ways, including you very personal what you do, as well, of course, what it means for society and business as well. And I think that's what, to me, makes this mega trend of aging longevity just so important. It also frustrates me that it doesn't kind of get enough attention compared to the other two, because it's incredibly important that we adjust to the life expectancy gains we've already achieved, let alone those that may be coming down the line, and we make the most of healthy aging. So that's going to be a little bit what I'm going to try and focus on. The irony, of course, of talking about technology and science is I'm going to have to try and get to use Slido, which may be a bit of a challenge. But let me begin by showing you some pictures that the ONS produced recently. I think they're very powerful pictures. And, of course, the topic of today is about sort of longevity in the next 10 years. But this is an urgent issue because if you take a longevity perspective, the earlier you start, the better. And I'm going to show some pictures about the age structure of the UK. And of course, the UK is not one of the most aging societies in the world, but like every country in the world, it's aging. And this is the standard way of looking at things. What we've got here, basically, the darker the colour, the more over 65-year-olds there are in the region. So this is the UK in, 1997. That's 2007. Notice how people retire and live by the coast. 2017, that's kind of roughly where we are now. It's getting a little bit dark, isn't it? Then 2027, wow, it's really starting to fill in. And then 2037. So this is sort of an urgent agenda. This is, I always give the example of the sort of frog in the boiler, you know the story about putting a frog in a saucepan and turning the heat up? Apparently it doesn't notice the temperature change until it's too late. I don't know if anyone's ever done that experiment, but it's a great metaphor, I think, for what's happening around us in terms of society, because this is what's occurring. But this is so much about an aging society. Notice the focus of the number of old people, and old being defined as 65. And I think that's a little bit misleading. So when I first started many, many years ago, writing as an undergraduate about demographic change in an aging society, it would be these sorts of charts that people would look at. And it's kind of hard to forecast the future, particularly as an economist. Demography is a little bit easier. On the left-hand side, you've got the demographic pyramid of the UK in 1966. You know, a lot of young people and then not that many old. And you can see in 2016 how things have changed and how in 2066 it's going to be even different. And this is called an aging society. And the focus is always to kind of draw a line at 65 plus and notice that that one on the right has a load more people aged over 65 than the one on the left. Now, I'm not saying that's not important, but to me that kind of is a bit of a limiting way of looking at this chart. Now, of course, if you look at it, what you immediately see is we've got a lot more people at sort of all older ages. So clearly we need to have a lot more resources for that group. And that's really important, and that's part of the ageing society agenda. How do we switch a society from the left to the right to provide resources for this big shift in the population? And of course, if the country hasn't got any more resources, then if you're going to give resources to those at the top, it's got to come from those at the bottom. And that's how you get stuck into that rather unpleasant intergenerational debate and conflict about it. But I'd like to sort of say what longevity is about is looking at the right-hand chart in a slightly different way. And that's to say, well, look at someone at the bottom, and I'm slightly abusing the chart here. Look at that person at the bottom. They basically got a very high probability of living to 80, 90 and beyond. Okay, just without the progress that we may be talking about later on today. And so the key thing about longevity is duration. I've just got a lot of length of time ahead of me. And of course that means I've got more time, and what do we do with that time? We structure time to make it work for us as a society, and if we've got more time, when would you like to use that time? Would you like to ease the pressures in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s? How do we restructure work and education? And of course, that to me is a really, really important thing. So the thing I'd like to focus on this chart is not, oh, there's more people aged over 65, but everyone at the bottom has got a lot more time ahead of them. In fact, everyone at every stage has got more time ahead of them than past generations of people that age. And that duration, that long-term perspective, is what I consider to be longevity. The other thing that doesn't come out of here is that how aging is changing. Aging is sort of malleable. There's all sorts of ways in which we can show that age is malleable. One is the US life expectancy is declining. So they used to do something right, and now they're doing something wrong. Similarly, Japan and Singapore have life expectancy about 5 years more than the UK, and theirs is still increasing, and ours is slowing down the rate of improvement. We know there's wide inequality in the UK in life expectancy. That proves us that age is malleable. But also, the reason we've got so many people living longer, and on average, and averages are very cruel here, healthier, is that we have made improvements in how we age. And that's what I think is what is distinctive about when I was writing essays as an undergraduate so many years ago, it was that there's more old people. But what I think we've started to notice the last 30 years is we can influence how we age. Age is malleable. The scientists today will tell you that we can really muck about with genetics and make age malleable to a degree you couldn't possibly imagine before. But we also know from exercise, diet, education, lifestyle, environment, stress, sleep, we can influence how we age. So that's kind of the longevity agenda. Two things happening. There's more old people, and how we're aging is changing. And for me, the key part of the longevity agenda is to maximize that right-hand channel, to maximize the number of people who are aging well, and then, of course, seizing the opportunities that that gives us, both as an economist. If we're living longer and we're healthier for longer and productive for longer, that should be a good economic story, not a bad economic story. And the rising number of people working aged over 60, I think, is part of that. But also, it's not just about the economy, it's also about our lifestyle. You know, we all, no one, what I find interesting about this world, when often you say people would like to live for longer, they say no. And then say, would you like more time? They say yes. So how can we kind of reconcile those two positions and focus on healthy aging? So how do we maximize, exploit the malleability of age, get as many people as possible living as long as possible? How do we adjust our social customs, our government policies, our corporate practices to seize the benefits of the life expectancy gains we've already got, let alone those that may be coming further down the line? And you know, the thing I want to try and stress is, for as an economist, for me, what's wonderful about this topic is, of course, if you succeed in this, not only you've got lots of very happy people, you've also got a very thriving economy. And given how every country around the world is aging, the countries and companies who succeed best in exploiting this malleability of age are going to seize a massive competitive advantage. Robert Lucas, a Nobel Prize-winning economist, once said, as soon as you start thinking about economic growth, it's hard to think about anything else. I kind of knock economic growth out of the way and say, once you start thinking about the malleability of age and trying to see if you can support as many people as possible living as healthily as possible, it's hard to think about anything else. When you've got that as your central policy focus, then, of course, you start asking all the right questions, like, why is there widening inequality? How can we promote healthy aging? Those are the questions the longevity agenda is about. So that's a little bit about the sort of social science, and this afternoon there's society, and this morning there's more around the science. we've got a huge number of people said they're coming along today. I think 300-400 people have said they're going to come along. We've got a lot of lecture-based material. We want to interact with you. So that's why we're going to use Slido. And the Slido is going to operate in a number of ways. One is it's going to get you to express some of your views through polls and word clouds and things like that. The other thing it's going to do is we're going to give you an opportunity to ask questions to the panel. So rather than stick a hand up, you can put your questions through on Slido. The nice thing about Slido, if you're not familiar with it, is that you can say, oh, I like that question. I want that to be pushed to the top of the queue. So the moderators can then find what the most popular questions are. If you've used Slido before, you'll know that it's a nice, easy, and good tool to use. So what I'm going to do now is a bit of an experiment with you. I'm going to try and get you to work and register onto Slido. So I think we've got a slide which has got the address, which will seamlessly in a moment appear on the screen. And if you can get your devices out, you've got the Wi-Fi code, I believe, is we gave out earlier is in the brochure. And if you go to this address, www.slido.com, you'll be asked for a hashtag. And what other hashtag could one possibly have but longevity? Once you start thinking about longevity, it just captures your mind. So hashtag longevity, or you can do the QR code as well. So we're going to try and just experiment with this a little bit. So if we can move on to the next slide. And we're going to ask a question. This is because I know some of you are going to be trying to get this to work out, so this is kind of not the most important question we get. But if you could choose a superpower, what would it be? Okay. It looks like we're getting things to work. So it looks like we've either got a biased group of people in the room, they're very, very interested in longevity, or the most common thing the public want is to have eternal youth. But thank you for that. So let's move on to the next question. Looks like everyone's kind of warmed up a little bit. Let's do the next one. It is, of course, an unrepresentative sample we have in the room. You've all got an interest in longevity. Many of you are engaged in this as a sector. So you're obviously thinking about this. What is the sort of key thing that you do to try and boost your own longevity? So this is a word cloud exercise. Type in something you do, and it will then pick up on the most popular responses. And I can tell I'm at a longevity meeting because metformin is appearing. Good setup for Nia. And pizza's made an appearance. That's very good. Excellent. That's obviously the person who's already got that as a superpower, I suspect. Excellent. Sex and fasting. That's good. Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. So exercise is there at the heart. And of course, as I think Eric Verdin said last year, for all the promise we've got with these fantastic technologies, it's still the case that the best cause we have to aid longevity right now is exercise. It'd be interesting to know what happens in 10 years' time if we were to do this word cloud. If we can have the next question, please. Okay, so this is perhaps getting a little bit more serious, but this is a sort of guesstimates. But how long do you think you're going to live for? No guarantees, by the way, I'm afraid. This is no money back. Okay, that's very interesting. I wonder if we should do this one at the end of the day as well, actually. I wondered if we should do that at the end of the day and see if there's been any change. Excellent. Okay, very good. I'd probably go myself for that top one. I'm sure there are others who would go elsewhere. And 120 plus succeed. Okay, that's great. If you're going to go big, go big. So 120 plus trumps 110, 119, which I think is probably quite logical, actually. I think that's probably a logical place to be in. If we can have the next question, please. Okay, so we have one of the things I like about the Longevity Forum, one of the things we try and cultivate is to get a basis around ideas, but different ideas, and bring all sorts of different people together, all sorts of different interests. And that last year led to a great buzz in the room because you got a chance to talk with people you wouldn't normally talk about. So let's find out why you're interested in being here today. Brilliant. Well, I have to say, as an academic, I'm thrilled that knowledge building is at the heart of everything. I suspect that living long requires continually thirsting for building knowledge. That's great to see. If we can have the next one, please. I think I have one last one. So the UK government has made this fantastic aim of boosting healthy life expectancy by 5 years, by the year 2035. So is that doable? Do you think we can make it? And more spelling, I'm afraid, Aubrey, is a challenge here. Okay, that's very interesting. Again, we might do this at the end of the day to see how we're going. So we have, I would say, a group of optimists in the room. They're probably the sort of what I call the pragmatic optimist, which sounds a bit of an oxymoron, sort of probably dominant, but it looks like we have a bunch of optimists, and that's great news. And of course, if I go back to what I was saying earlier, as an economist, I find it really interesting how much focus there is on GDP. And we have Andy Haldane here today. Thank you for coming along, Andy. And Andy, of course, Chief Economist of the Bank of England, knows that when the UK goes into recession, there's so much focus on a fall in GDP and what can be done with interest rates and fiscal policy. I don't see the same outcry when life expectancy growth starts to slow down. And I think, trying to get healthy life expectancy more as a central target for government is really important. It's one of the things I like about actually stipulating this as a target. Loads of issues. How do you measure it? And how do you achieve it? But of course, achieving it is going to require lots of levers, both on the scientific and the social science side. Well, thank you. It looks like we're all warmed up on Slido. Please keep using it. We're going to use polls throughout the panel, but also we want you to put your questions to the panel using Slido. That's how we're going to do it. So thank you very much.